Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Kensrud. I am the Physical Therapist Assistant Program Director in a full-time program. I'm glad that you guys could join us today. I've been teaching in this program full-time since 2010 and the program director for the last 5 years or so. So just a little overview about the PT Assistant program. One of the most important things that I want to make sure everyone knows is that PT assistants work in just a wide variety of places. They work with senior citizens and older Americans in skilled nursing facilities. A lot of PT assistants work in home health settings. Some work in pediatric clinics or school settings. Many work in hospitals, and some work in outpatient orthopedic clinics. And so our program, like all PT assistant programs in the country, train you to be a well-rounded clinician who's able to get a job in any of those places. And so we teach someone broadly to be able to work in any place, but then often any specialization that happens after you get that job. So that's an important thing to know, is that the program is going to cover content area related to the full lifespan and all types of conditions affecting the neurological system, the cardiopulmonary system, musculoskeletal system. The other thing I want to make sure that you know is that kind of the nature of the PT assistant team. Physical therapists are ultimately responsible for the care that the patient receives. The physical therapist is trained to do an initial assessment, to do an evaluation and come up with a plan of care and set goals for physical therapy. The PT assistant is trained to work as an extension of the PT in carrying out that plan of care. And there's really very little difference between the treatments that a PT can do and a PT assistant can do. So most PT assistants can do nearly, like I said, there's very few exceptions to that. So PT assistants have a lot of autonomy, and there's a lot of clinical decision-making that goes into the job. And so as a PT assistant, you might have a full day of patients to see. You could even be, for example, in a home health setting and not have a physical therapist anywhere in the vicinity. A physical therapist always has to be available by phone in case you need to consult with them, but you need to be able to, review the plan of care and assess the patient that day and come up with the best intervention and respond to unexpected things. And so it is a job with a lot of decision-making and a lot of autonomy. In terms of the training and salary, I'd like to show this. Partly, I want to make sure that people know that the PT assistant program is not a good decision, in my opinion, if you know for sure your end goal is to be a physical therapist. Now, there are a couple of big bridge programs in the country, meaning ways that if you're a PT assistant, you can transition and become a PT, but that's really rare. For the most part, it's a totally separate track. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you know your goal is to be a physical therapist, then I recommend that you touch base with me outside of the meeting and let me kind of talk to you about the path for becoming a physical therapist in terms of what those paths look like. Becoming a PT, you get a bachelor's degree first and then go to about 3 years of graduate school. And physical therapist assistant, you have a handful of prerequisites and then 2 years full-time with an associate degree and to be a PT assistant. And as I said, the PT assistant classes don't transfer to PT school. and they don't make it easier to get into PT school. So make sure you do know at the outset which is the right career path for you. They're both super rewarding, lots of job satisfaction for both. You get to work with patients hands-on. Being a PT assistant is rewarding, and PT assistants are highly respected, very valued within our profession. And so certainly I hope it's the right choice for many of you. And so one thing you'll notice, the final bullet here, is both do have to pass a national licensing examination in order to work. And so once you graduate from a program like ours, then you still have to pass that national test, and we help students be prepared for that test. The career outlook is good for PT assistants. The projected job growth is 32% between 2020 and 2030. And so that's a third more jobs. That's much faster job growth than the average for all occupations. You can see that in the most recent US News and World Report best jobs, PT assistant was the #1 best healthcare support job. And the number 13 overall in the top 100 of all best jobs. So the median salary across the nation is, as you can see there, about $59,000. And so it's a lot of good jobs out there. The jobs are only going to continue to grow, and so there's going to be very high demand, and you earn a pretty good salary for 2 years of college education. So, and lots of job satisfaction. To get into our program, there are these prerequisites listed here. So math 65 or higher, writing 121, and then a full sequence of anatomy and physiology. And that has to be within the previous 10 years. The math and writing do not have an expiration date. So even if you took those many, many years ago, those would still be okay. But the anatomy and physiology does have to be within 10 years. Another important thing to notice is that you need to complete the entire sequence that you start. And so if you're taking a 100 level anatomy and physiology series, that is just 2 terms. For example, biology 121 and 122 here at Mount Hood Community College, that would be it. You would have finished the whole series. But if you're taking the 200 level, that requires 3 terms. So depending on which one you're in, you do have to complete all 3 by the time of the application deadline. This is typical for the past, in recent memory, we've had somewhere on the order of 100 applications per year, and we interview 64, and then 24 are admitted to the program. It is a limited, restricted entry program, and what that means is we're only able to admit 24 students. And so this is the process that we use. And the decision, how a person gets from the pool of applicants to invited for an interview at this point in time, the biggest factor is, well, certainly completing all of the application requirements, but also your grade point average in anatomy and physiology is something that is looked at. And then that goes away. Once you're invited for an interview, it's really just your performance in the interview itself that then the decision is made based on that. And it is a group interview, small group. You have an opportunity to answer some questions one-on-one with faculty members, but then we also have participants participate in a group activity together. And there's also a small written reflection question that we ask you to do in real time during the interview. The timeline is applications are due in April. We'll do interviews typically, hopefully we would do them in May or early June at the latest, and then notifications will be mailed out shortly thereafter. And we do have an orientation session for the 24 students admitted to the program, so that you're up to speed on things that need to happen before school starts in September. And things like what immunizations you would need, or what CPR class you need, that sort of thing. So that is something that we provide to the students who are admitted to the program. And then the program starts in fall term in September. And once you start the program, you're going to be with that cohort of 24 students throughout the 2 years. And you take all of your classes together. Our classes are offered just once per year, and they have to be taken in sequence. And so you get to know each other really well. And it's a full-time program. I was just talking with some students after my class that ended at 4, and the woman I was speaking with said, I have a bachelor's degree, but I've never worked this hard before. It's a lot of information that comes at you pretty quickly. And so it is a big commitment. And so we just want people to know that it takes a lot of time in terms of being able to attend classes, but also study outside of class. So you do have to be at a point in your life where you're ready to and able to kind of make that time commitment to make it work. It's 7 academic terms, and within that, you will have 3 different clinical affiliations. What that means is 3 different times you'll work in a clinic or a hospital or a skilled nursing facility for 6 weeks full-time, working side by side with a mentor who might be a PT or a PT assistant, and learning to do the job. So all the things that you've learned in class, then you're going to go out there and apply in the real world. And by the time you graduate, at the end of the 2nd year, you'll have done 18 weeks, which is more than four months of full-time clinical work. So you have a lot of good experience by the time you graduate, which often leads to job offers. And then the last step after graduation in June is taking that licensing exam that I referred to earlier. And those are offered 4 times a year. Most of our students take those in July, the month after graduating. A couple of points about the application process. You have to apply for general admission at Mount Hood Community College if you've never attended here before, in order to obtain a Mount Hood ID number. And so if you've been a student here, you already have that ID number, but if you've never been a student here, then you do need to do that general admission. Then you're going to pay a $35 application fee and complete an online application called the PTA CAS. There are links to that on our website. And so all of your materials get submitted to PTA CAS. And it takes some time. So it's not something you want to leave to the last minute. And you can work on it a little bit at a time. And then once it's ready, you don't submit it until it's all ready. So you can do a little bit at a time. And you want to allow plenty of time, because all of your official transcripts have to be sent to PTA CAS, which can take some time. And another important thing to know is that if there's a tie for who's going to be the 24th person accepted to the class, we do use date of complete application as a tiebreaker. And so there is some incentive to get your application in as early as possible. Financial aid. We encourage everyone to fill out a FAFSA form, which will make you eligible for, to see what financial aid you're eligible for and possibly scholarships. And the Mount Hood's financial aid website has lots of information about whether you should, you know, just everything you might need to know about that process. But we want to know if you're going to apply and are hoping to come next year, you could apply for financial aid this year. The earlier, the better. And finally, questions. If you have questions about the logistics of your application and things like, is this particular class I took at this college 5 years ago going to count toward my prerequisite, or that sort of thing, those should go to LR admissions at mhcc.edu, because those are the folks who are going to be able to really get the answers that you need to those sorts of questions. On the other hand, if you're curious about the PTA career or what the curriculum is like once you're in the program, that sort of thing, then you should email me, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Likewise, if you're thinking, you're on the fence about whether you want to be a PT or a PT assistant, I'm more than happy to talk with you about that as well. Someone wrote, is a 3.0 GPA and A&P sufficient to be considered for the program? I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah.
That is correct. Let me just, yeah, the group as a whole, 3.0 is the minimum GPA required. So just use that as a self-check. If you have, you know, a 3-class sequence and you have 2 Cs, you would need to redo one because you have that 3.0 is a minimum GPA. And every year we have someone who applies with a GPA below that. And that's, I just don't want people to spend the time if you're not ready. Just, we don't penalize you in the PTA program for retaking courses. So you can certainly retake something that you have a lower grade. And if you get the A, that's all we're going to look at the time you apply. I could also add that if you happen to be an alternate for the prior year, you do get 5 points for that as well. So basically in that first admissions stage, there's a total of 25 points possible, 20 for your A&P, and then 5 for being a prior year alternate. And as Kristen was saying, that's pretty much it as far as stage 1, as far as what we're really calculating.
Each time that we admit a class, we have 24 students that we offer a position in the class, and then we have an alternate list. The alternate list is there so that if somebody has to pull away and can't start in September as planned, we'll call the first alternate to see if they can join the class. And if they can't, we'll call the second alternate. And we work our way down the list to try and ensure that we have a full group of 24 students starting together in September, because we want to admit the full number of students that we can. That's the purpose of the alternate list. If you made it onto the alternate list but didn't get in and then reapplied the following year, you would get 5 extra points toward getting into an interview. And so it's an incentive for people who, you know, you don't make it onto the alternate list unless we think you would be successful in the program. And so it's for those who are really committed to doing this as a career and reapply, it's a way to kind of acknowledge that. What is the graduation rate and job offer rates once completing the program? The graduation rate that has varied over the years from about 83% to 100%. Typically, we graduate 22, 23, nearly a full cohort. And so I'd say that's pretty typical. In terms of the job offer rates, we have to track that for accreditation. And so we measured it a year after graduation. And the job rate has been well over 90%, 90 to 100% for many years, and continues to be the case. Many students have job offers prior to graduation, in fact. And those statistics get updated regularly on our website as we get new data. And so if you look on the outcomes tab under our programs website, you'll be able to see those as they get updated.
Kristen, you were mentioning that it's a full day
Mhm.
throughout the terms. Does that day start like around 8 or 9 and then go to 4 or 5? Is that what we're looking at in terms of like preparing for daycare or
Mhm.
care for our children and things like that?
Yeah, I guess I'll use this week as an example for the first year students. Because of COVID, they had Monday class remote because it was just lecture material. So we did do that, opt to do that class remote. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday classes at 8 a.m. live lecture in person on campus in Gresham. And then we divide, so everyone is in lecture together, but then we divide the group into two separate lab cohorts. And so some people are in the early lab, some are in the later lab. The people in the early lab today finished at noon. So they were in class from 8 to noon and then done. The people in the late lab had a break from 9 to noon, or excuse me, they had a break from 9 to 1. And then they were in class from 1 to 4 for lab. And most of the time people end up staying here and studying and working together. Some people go home, take a nap, whatever it is, if they live close by, but because there is a lot of studying that needs to get done, and a lot of it is stuff you can't do by yourself very easily. It's hard to practice palpation or transfers or different things that you're learning. It just makes a lot of sense to study together, and so people tend to stay and when they do have a break in lab and get their studying done. And then we alternate that each term, so that if you're in the early lab one term, you'll be in the late lab the following term. That's how we've always done it to keep it fair, so that everyone has an equal chance of being in both labs. And we mix the cohorts up too, so you have a chance to work with it. Hopefully everyone in the class in lab by the time you graduate. You guys have other questions? So there are requirements as for being in a health professions program. When I talked earlier about how we have an orientation session for the people who get admitted to the program, that's related to those requirements. And so you do have to have immunizations. And the state of Oregon mandates what those are. And so measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis B, a whole list of things, including COVID vaccines. So you need to have those. You need to have a TB screening for tuberculosis. You need to do a 10-panel drug screen, urinalysis. You need to have a CPR card, and it has to be a very specific one, American Heart Association. And there's also a criminal background check that we do. So all of those things have to happen. And so there's a timeline, and people typically start working on those over the summer so that they're ready. And it really is all geared toward making sure you're ready to go to clinical, because our clinical partners, the hospitals and clinics in the area, all require those things. And so we have to make sure that people have that in order to sign you up for your clinical education. So the question was, I applied for the program, but was told that my overall GPA was not enough to get in. I have a 3.0 GPA in the 200 series anatomy and physiology courses. I wanted to verify because I didn't understand, to make sure that I understood the requirements.
Okay, so the GPA is strictly just the A&P courses that you provided on your application. If you, let's say you took a 100 series and a 200 series, you would want to use the series that gives you the best GPA, because we do not look at overall GPA for the PTA program. It is strictly the prerequisites for A&P.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions before I end this meeting? Again, feel free to email myself or the LR admissions email that I showed earlier if you do think of things after this meeting is over. Thank you everyone for being here, and have a great evening. Bye.